Defence Ministry has accused Britain of staging a chemical weapons attack in Syria in an attempt to provoke conflict. The United Nations Security Council called an emergency meeting over the issue where the Russian ambassador urged the United States, France and the UK not to opt for military action. In a fiery exchange, he also lashed out at the West, accusing allies of trying to topple the Assad regime.
The attack in the town of Douma, enough to prompt calls for a strike on Syria's President Assad from the US, France and the UK. But according to Russia, that video was faked and the attack staged at the request of the British. At Russia's Ministry of Defence today, the assembled press were shown testimony from two doctors who told how it had just been a usual day at their hospital in Douma till unknown men rushed in and started dousing people with water, saying there'd been a chemical weapons attack, at which point panic set in.
Today, the Russian MOD has other proof which indicates that the UK was directly involved in staging this provocation in eastern Ghouta. We know for a fact that from April the 3rd to April the 6th, powerful pressure from London was exerted on representatives of the so-called White Helmets to quickly stage the premeditated provocation.
The proof wasn't given, but the grand strategy behind all this was to provoke the United States, the Defence Ministry said, to launch missile strikes against Syria. Russia's claim follows hints from their foreign minister earlier in the day that the perpetrators behind this supposed provocation had had Russia on their minds.
Our specialists have not found a single fact. We have irrefutable information that it was another fabrication, and intelligence agencies of a state that is now striving to spearhead a Russo-phobic campaign were involved in that fabrication.
At the United Nations, Britain's UN representative categorically denied British involvement.
This is grotesque. It's a blatant lie. It's some of the worst piece of fake news we've yet seen from the Russia propaganda machine.
It is Russia alone that used its veto 6 times to prevent the condemnation of Assad's use of chemical weapons.
Diana Magnay, Sky News, Moscow.
And White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders has reaffirmed America's stance in Russia's role in the suspected chemical attack.
We're again confident that both Syria had responsibility in this chemical weapons attack, but we also hold Russia responsible for their failure to stop chemical weapons attacks from taking place.
The UK's National Security Advisor has revealed he has evidence that Russia has been spying on Sergei and Yulia Skripal, who were poisoned in the British city of Salisbury for at least 5 years. The Skripals were poisoned by a nerve agent last month, with traces of it found on their front door.
Ever since Sergei and Yulia Skripal were found slumped on a bench in Salisbury, Moscow has demanded to see the proof that it was behind the poisoning. Today, the UK released some. The government published a letter from the National Security Advisor, Sir Mark Sedwill, to the NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg. It contained new detail.
They will have drafted that very carefully, and they won't have wished to go further than the evidence that they've got.
Dame Pauline Neville-Jones was the head of the UK's Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre. She gave me her thoughts on the letter's content.
The UK has made 3 assertions, has it not, which is to say that the Russians had the means, they had the operational experience, and they had the motive, and no other candidate qualifies for all 3. And what it does is to produce evidence to substantiate these 3 elements in the UK argument.
The most striking revelation is probably that Russian military intelligence, the GRU, hacked into Yulia Skripal's emails.
They were presumably monitoring her movements and indeed the relationship between the two. So they knew when she was going to be in the country. They probably know a great deal about the relationship between this young lady and her father.
In what is becoming a weekly press event, the Russian ambassador to the UK again questioned the British evidence.
We get the impression that the British government is deliberately pursuing the policy of destroying all possible evidence, classifying all remaining materials, and making an independent and transparent investigation impossible.
It is highly unusual for a government to release intelligence of this nature into the public domain. That's why it took until now to do so. It is a sign of the ever-important information war between Britain and Russia and the need to win that war, the fundamental need to persuade not just allies, but the public too. Alistair Bunkle, Sky.